Hello, everyone. Welcome to Pod Maverick After Dark. It is 9:55 on October 30th. The Dallas Mavericks just defeated the Memphis Grizzlies 125-110 in their probably most thorough victory of their three straight to start the season. I'm joined, as always, by Josh Bowe. Josh, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm lucky I got to watch most of the second half because the annual Bally Sports self-detonates moment happened tonight. I don't even know if it came back on for everyone else, but it didn't work for me. The whole first half, I tried to do some illegal streams, didn't really work. Then the second half, I couldn't get it on my iPad or my TV, but it loaded on my phone. So the smallest screen I have, it loaded on that one. But I was able to watch the second half, and I'm glad I got to watch this game because it, like you said, it was their most thorough win of the season. I think it's their most complete win of the season. So there's some good stuff to talk about tonight.
Yeah, for on the Grizzlies end, it's sort of disappointing. Their season might be over with before they start. Let's see. Ja Morant's out for another 22 games. Steven Adams is out for the year. Brandon Clark is out rehabbing his Achilles. I suspect he'll come back at some point this year, but that's not an easy recovery process. And then they had two more guys that I'd consider rotation players, and Santi Aldama and I think it's Luke Kennard that were missing time due to just various injuries. And this was a game I expected the Mavericks to win, and they did not disappoint. Though how they got there was particularly interesting, and I think there's a lot we could talk about from this game. It is worth noting for anyone listening on the podcast the next day who maybe missed the game because of the Rangers game. Kyrie Irving missed his first game of the season with, I think it's a left foot sprain is what they described it as, but it's essentially the same foot that kept him out of games at the end of last year. And I don't want to read too much into things, but a smaller guard with feet problems, it is the sort of thing that makes you a little bit cautious, and the Mavericks were probably thinking the same thing. Kyrie participated in shoot-around today. We saw the videos and the pictures of it. And so I think the Mavericks looked at this, took the gamble, and said, you know what? We think we can beat the Grizzlies without Kyrie, and we'll need him again a little later in the week. And boy, did they put on a performance. I don't really know how to start talking about this game. So since you missed the first half, one of the things that was particularly interesting is Derek Lively got into foul trouble pretty quickly. And the Mavericks sort of had to scramble around again with Josh Green kind of starting in place of Kyrie. The Mavericks hit a ton of threes in the first half. They ended up hitting 15. Luka was back on his bullshit. I tweeted something to the effect of that in the first 10 quarters of the season, Luka was 16 of 32 from three. So that's 50% for those of you who aren't good at math. Around the same point, it was also very funny. Through 10 quarters, Luka has also only hit 16 free throws. So we're looking at some really truly insane numbers from Luka. He obviously finished the game with 35, 12, and 12. He was the engine behind why they won, but they got a lot of interesting contributions from around the team. And you missed, I guess you got to see, so in the first quarter, everyone, and including me, everyone online is like, why is Derek Jones Jr. starting for the third straight time? Like, what is he giving this team? Because he wasn't very good on defense. The Mavericks gave up a ton of points in the first quarter again. But the answer is clearly they see something with what he gives them offensively. I wrote that sort of in jest, but I actually think it's the truth. His downhill abilities and like willingness to just sort of bull rush at the rim is fascinating. Yes, he hit a ton of threes tonight. That's not going to happen very often, but he's drawing fouls like nobody's business. Every time he gets in the lane, it feels like it's right at the rim in a lot of circumstances, which, okay, that's great. And, he ended up with 22 and 4. And, we got a hilarious Tim Hardaway game, just the full gambit of Tim Hardaway, just so much Tim Hardaway-ness. And for anybody that can't see my shirt, this is my custom-made Doncic Hardaway 2024 shirt. Really glad that thing is still going because Tim cracks me up. When he's good, he's great. When he's bad, he's horrible. There's just no other way around it. So you got to see the second half. What were I'm kind of rambling, but what did you see from this game that was of interest to you?
Well, I kind of put on Twitter, but I guess my hot take is, I think this Mavericks team is going to set the record for offensive rating again, like they did in 2020, because this team is, on a scorcher, and Doncic is going to come back down to earth on his threes like a little bit. But even then, they really haven't gotten much from Maxey in terms of shooting, or Seth Curry, or even Kyrie. He's shown up in the clutch in the previous 2 wins, but by his standards, he hasn't shot the ball particularly well. We still haven't even, Tim was pretty good tonight, but he hasn't had like a scorching Tim game yet. I would say he was pretty up and down those first 2 games. Like, there's still some meat on the bone, and they've scored 125 points at least in all 3 of these games. So
that's like some early 2000s Mavericks stuff.
This team can fill it up, and it makes last season feel all the more sillier, because like we know the formula: Luka plus shooting plus a rim runner. Just have that on the floor. You don't need 4 all-stars necessarily. You just need Luka, you need shooting, and you need one guy that can do some vertical spacing. Mavericks have 2 in Lively and Dwight Powell, and this works. Like, it's why last season was so puzzling. Like, Luka is just that good as long as you have, the kind of complement of role players that the Mavericks have around him. So that was kind of like my first thought. And they're probably going to lead the league in made threes. Like, this team is just going to absolutely bomb away. It's partly why, like, the Grant Williams thing was such a big acquisition, not necessarily because he's like the perfect fit for what they need, because they still do need maybe like their final piece is probably like that dynamic forward that can do a little bit more, be like their definitive third best player.
Yeah.
But how many times have you talked about this? There's such a difference when you're like, think about how many perimeter players the Mavericks have brought in since Luka's been here, where they've been okay shooters that Luka has kind of had to coax into being better, good to great shooters. Reggie Bullock had a pretty decent track record, but he was never. I think he was more prolific in Dallas than his previous stops. Dorian Finney-Smith couldn't hit the broadside of a barn before Luka was drafted, and then afterward turned himself into a nicely compensated, well-regarded 3-and-D player.
Yep.
Like, we just see it time and time again, and it's like, well, Grant Williams doesn't need Luka. He played on a team, basically without a true point guard,
right,
for 3 years or whatever, and he shot 38% or better from 3 pretty much every season. Like, he's a great shooter without needing to be spoon-fed open looks, and now he's getting spoon-fed the most open looks of his career.
So
he looks
open.
Great.
It's funny you say that, because the looks are so open, he started to miss shots. So he was only 4 of 8 from the floor. Only, I'd say. He hit 3 of his first 4.
Yeah.
And looked just like flat out incandescent. And then like the shots were they're just so open. And you saw this with Josh Green tonight. Josh Green had like a hilarious game. He finished with 12 points and 3 assists, but the Mavericks had given up a 17-point lead in the fourth quarter in like 3 minutes and 40 seconds.
I know exactly what player you're talking about.
Josh Green comes out of a timeout. He gets the ball, and he does the thing I bitch about all the time. First of all, he travels. I cannot believe they didn't call this travel. He gets the ball on a swing out, and he looks to pass to the corner, despite there not being anybody within 12 feet of him. That's the kind of – and we're talking like both sides. And then he realizes he's open, and then he travels and goes and gets a score at the basket. The refs didn't call the travel. Cannot believe they didn't call that. Maybe somebody will prove me wrong and send me some video. But like refs tend to call unconfident ball handling plays or sloppy looking stuff, and that was one of them. But it's like the kind of space that these guys are getting, and that again, this is because they're playing with such pace and because they're playing with so spread out. Teams are really having to scramble to defend them. And it's just something else to watch. Tonight was it wasn't exactly fair, but basketball's not fair.
Yeah.
Sorry. But it was without Kyrie, probably the most maximized version of what you can expect from these Mavericks. Is that fair? I mean, Lively obviously probably would have played more.
Yeah.
But he gives them a different look. I don't know, but this was really something from the guards and the wings.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is just they followed the formula. They have more bodies. And it's not necessarily like, you look at the minutes distribution and there's really, besides it's Jones, Williams that are playing like the bulk of the minutes that are like new, but like Maxi's still playing a lot. Tim's still like these were guys that were playing last year. Josh Green's playing more, but he played decent amount last season. It just makes a difference when for like 3 or 4 minutes you're not rolling out like Frank Ntilikina and Facu Campazzo and it matters. Like we talk, I know a lot of people like to like maybe casual observers of the NBA like to kind of joke around the league that like you only need to tune in for the final 5 minutes, but no, every possession matters. Every stretch of minutes matters. And the fact that they're just not rolling out like non-NBA quality players for those brief stretches and like for 3 to 4 minutes in the second quarter and for a couple minutes maybe in the third, that just matters so much more. Even like Seth was only 1 of 5, but they played so well with him on the floor because he's a real
the defense
NBA
panics
player.
every time he gets the ball. It's like, oh no.
Yeah.
Oh no. What's Seth gonna do?
Yeah, so that was really nice. And another thought I had, you asked me kind of what were my takeaways watching the second half. This was shaping up to be a pretty nice game where Luka didn't need to be a superhuman and for them to win, because I think he had 22 in the first half.
Yes.
And when they built that 17-point lead, I want to say he didn't score that much more up until that point, and then they kind of needed him to get cooking. I think he had like 24 points like sometime in the fourth quarter, so he only had 2 points for most of the second half, and they were playing well. And I was like, oh, maybe Luka can score 26 points tonight, and they can kind of coast to a win. Like that'd be really nice. Didn't happen, but this still felt like the less. I mean, I don't know how to say it because every one of his games so far have been ridiculous, but this felt like the least they've needed to rely on him kind of bailing them out all season, which was nice. And I say that, and he had 35, 12, and 12.
Yeah.
So obviously his fingerprints were all over the game, but yeah, that was just kind of my thought in the second half. There were just long stretches where Luka wasn't necessarily dominating the ball or doing a ton, or he got to take some breaks on the bench and they weren't like collapsing, which is a nice sign.
So Luka's usage is probably still through the roof. I mean, granted,
I can look it up right now.
3-game sample. It's going to be what it's going to be. But I'll tell you what we have not had at all last year was the touchdown play he made to Derrick Jones Jr., who scored the left-handed layup with Jaren Jackson Jr. chasing him down. Luka's willingness to dribble real hard 2 to 3 times after getting the rebound and even fake pace. Like it's moving them up by a second or two every possession. But Harp talked about this at the top of the broadcast. I want to say before the game, they're playing at the fifth highest pace. And that's really going to help their offensive rating too. Like there's something different about the team. And what I am really curious about, with only 3 games in, is we know that they can play slower. That's what's so nice about this. It's like, okay, you're extrapolating.
They don't have to prove that.
Yeah. And like you're extrapolating out over 82 games and you get the people that are like, well, the playoffs slow down. You know what I would say? Okay. Bring it.
They've been one of the best half-court offenses the last 3, even when they were awful last season, like their record, they only won 38 games, but they were one of the best half-court offenses in the NBA last season. They don't need to prove that to anyone. Yeah, Luka had a 36% usage, which is still, really high, but what are you going to do? But yeah, the pace thing is interesting. They that's one of those things that's crazy because literally every NBA coach and every NBA team in training camp in the preseason says we're going to push the pace, we're going to run more, and then usually it doesn't happen. I mean, that's happened with the Mavericks for a couple straight years now. And then we kind of joked about that in the preseason, but yeah, I want to say they played at like somewhere in the high 90s possession wise per game. And I think every game this season they've played has been over 100 possessions per game. So that's a pretty big jump. Of course, it's only 3 games, so it's small sample, yada, yada, yada. But But so far it seems to be working. I also really love that Jones play. That pass that's like going to be that's an under the radar like brilliant Luka pass because like Jones didn't have like he hit him and I mean it was like
It was
a quarterback.
perfect.
Yeah, yeah, it was absolutely perfect.
Because it's like you're throwing it over the defensive player of the year. That's the part that's nuts.
Yeah.
So
and you're hitting him in stride. Didn't have to stop. He didn't have to like hit him right in the pocket. Like it was
right.
Yeah, it was great.
All right. Okay, so we should take a short break here to do the traditional requests of our listenership. So, if those of you who are in here right now, if you could take just a minute and go like this stream, that would be very helpful to Josh and I. We do one of these after every single game. We try to do our other postseason show after every single game, but we'll see if I'm actually able to continue the pace. The Dallas Mavericks are on a high pace, so am I. And I am not a spring chicken, unlike some of the Dallas Mavericks. If you could also consider subscribing to our show, I would be very grateful. Like I mentioned, we do 2 shows after every single game as frequently as we can. I'll probably try to do once the season's going a little more off what do you want to call it, more kind of one-off interviews. You might do some of those. You used to do more, but since we've had kids, it's harder to do these sorts of things. The dog is barking in the background like a madman. I hope you guys can't hear her. I apologize. Where are you, knucklehead? Hi, that's Lila Rose. But anyway, if you guys could subscribe to the show, we'd really, really appreciate it. That's all I got. So let me see here. I responded to one commenter who was like, you guys are being too grumpy after game 2. And like, I didn't think we were grumpy. Like anybody who's heard us is like, but still, I do think it's at least worth addressing a couple of the things that were not ideal in this game. On the one hand, it's fantastic the Mavericks won without needing Derek Lively. On the other hand, this was the first time I've seen him since I really thought he looked like a rookie.
Yep. Which is pretty impressive for the third game,
Mm-hmm.
Thought that would have been the first game, and he had his best game of the season. So, yeah. And even then, like, when he was still on the floor, like, he had 6 rebounds in 14 minutes. He had a block. He had a really nice alley-oop finish. Like, it wasn't like he looked necessarily lost the whole time. He just, the young big men are going to pick up fouls. Like Jaren Jackson is a defensive player of the year, and he still has issues with foul trouble.
Well,
like,
and Jackson really baited him a couple of times. That's probably the most skilled defensive big he's played so far. I guess he didn't really guard Towns very much during the preseason, but one of the things that Harp talked about early in the game, and I was really glad to hear this described, was he talked about how bad Lively screens have been.
He did? I'm kind of surprised.
He really did. He just talked about how Luka was clearly frustrated with a couple of his screens and the angles that he chose. Mm-hmm. And I just like to hear that because it's okay. Hardy's Lively's going to make these sorts of mistakes. And it's something that he's going to really only learn through doing and through film. You're playing with one of the best rollmen in the league, or one of the best pick and roll guys in the league. So that's all right. Mm-hmm. What I think that's particularly interesting about him tonight was this was the first time I'd seen him fouling when out of position. Like he had one when he was under the rim and he fouled. And it's like at that point, if you're that far out of position, you just got to let it go. There are going to be opportunities every now and again. I wrote about this in the recap. It might have not been totally clear, but he's also got to be aware of his own fouls, where if he's going to be making a risky play, there needs to be something in the back of his head that understands, hey, if I pick up this foul, it's going to be my 4th foul in the first half. Is it worth it? Because him being out on the floor matters to the team. They got away with it tonight, but there are going to be games, mainly their next game against Denver, where they can't afford that,
Yeah, they need all the horses. This is the one thing about the team, the way that it's constructed, and it's like some of the previous Mavs teams is, the sum is, the parts are, what is it? Mm-hmm. The sum is greater than the whole. Yeah, mm-hmm. And I butchered that phrase, okay. but yeah, so it's nice to have this kind of depth, and you don't have maybe a clear-cut third best player or a third all-star, but you've got all these guys you can play. The thing about it is, if you want to, all those guys need to show up. You can't have guys have off nights in your main core rotation if that's the way you've built your team. So they were able to get away with it tonight. But yeah, like you said, they'll need to pick it up. And that's unfortunately that's the part of the game I didn't watch a lot of the first half.
I mean,
And
he only
think that's
played
where
14 total minutes. He got his fifth foul 1 minute into the second half.
Yeah, I didn't really see him play.
That was the one where Jackson just baited him something horribly, and it's just like
that's okay.
Yeah, and you kind of walk away from it. The only other frustrating element of the night, like this is almost the polar opposite of the previous game where Luka was great and we were frustrated with every single other player. The only other guy tonight who got his first minutes of the season is Jaden Hardy. He hit 2 fantastic catch and shoot threes. Okay. I mean, his shot is just so great off the catch. But that dude's handles, and he challenged John Conchar twice. Conchar is an amazing defender. Like he is an outs and didn't score. And there was just some real frustrating elements of Hardy's game tonight. It was, Martin in the chat says, dang, Luka had to play 40 minutes. Well, Luka had to play 40 minutes in no small part because some of the bench guys that the Mavericks went to just weren't able to produce enough offense. You'd like to see Hardy step into a role where he could do this on a night like tonight, but he just wasn't able to. And it's nothing that makes me think anything less of him, but he was a -7 in 9 minutes. It's not great. Okay. It's just not. And he ended up being the only other player besides Derek Lively to have a negative plus minus, I think, if I'm looking at this right.
Yeah. And I didn't see him play. I don't think he really played much in the second half. So that felt like a coaching thing where they saw how he was going and they're like, nope.
I hate that for him. I hate that for him because he's still young. He has a confidence. He's confidence begets confidence, I think, with shooting and with scoring and with playing. And I don't know, just yet I found myself a little frustrated in that because I want more for him is all.
Yeah. But with that's the thing about this roster though, is he has to make the most of the time. It's not necessarily fair, but he has to make the most of his time because Seth and Dante are vets that they can go to, which is kind of what they did, especially the second half. I think Seth played all his minutes, and I don't really remember Jaden playing that much in the second half. So
no. I think he played a few minutes when Exum got got headbutted by human whirling dervish Marcus Smart.
Yeah. So yeah, he's got to be, it's not necessarily the ideal or fair, but he's going to have a quick cook this season because unlike last season,
they just got the bodies.
Yeah, they have the bodies now that they don't have to just kind of throw him out there in the fire and watch him sink or swim. If he's not playing well, this coaching staff's gonna pull him pretty quick.
That's right. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that's really worth there.
I mean, the defense is still not great.
Yeah.
Memphis had 52 points in the paint tonight. They almost shot 50% from the field. They shot pretty well from 3. I don't think the Mavericks have had really a clean defensive game.
No, not from start to finish.
Yeah, they've done a pretty good job in the fourth quarters, kind of bucking up when they've needed it, which is hey, it's a huge improvement over last season when it just felt like they kind of withered away in fourth quarters and things like that and lost all those clutch games. So yeah, they got to figure out the first quarter stuff because that's really what's killing them are these first quarters. San Antonio had a huge first quarter, 46 points, Memphis 36. And for Memphis to score 30, this team is offensively challenged, to say the least. They have 2 guys, really 3 guys that can score, and that is it. I mean, it's kind of like their rotation, honestly, right now looks a lot like last season's Mavericks without Ja and these injuries. They've got 2 or 3 guys that can do stuff, and then it's like Tillman and Williams. Okay, these guys you'd feel better if they're playing 10 to 15 minutes, and they've got guys that are playing 30 to 28, 29 minutes that have to play that can't score. They had 3 guys in double figures, and that was it. So for that team to kind of get going in the first quarter was a little disheartening. But at least the Mavericks have shown some ability to weather the storm and at least put together one good defensive quarter. Where last season, I don't know if they strung together 4 defensive quarters consecutively at all. So
I think that's right. Yeah. Well, there's not a ton else we really need to hit on here because the Mavericks play the Bulls on Wednesday night first of all, I just need to say this out loud. Dallas Mavericks if there's anybody listening to Dallas Mavericks that can do this for me, 7 p.m. start times are the way.
No.
They're the way because it's a 7:15 tip. It's a half hour back. All of us who watch these games and stay up all night, that extra half hour just makes a big difference. We're never going to get it, though.
That DFW traffic will not agree.
It's not.
With you. That's why no one can get to the AAC by 7:15. That's it.
That feels like a self-fulfilling prophecy. First of all, and as we saw on the court today, it's Dallas Fort Worth. Okay, the new court that's coming where we are now I tease, like, so many people message me. I was like, I'm just kidding. Like, I live in Garland. Like, I'm going to talk any trash. But the Dallas Fort Worth acknowledgement of it all is particularly interesting, I think. Anyhow, all right. So we're kind of cutting it a little bit short tonight. But again, lots of Dallas Mavericks content out there. Want to use everyone's time wisely. We will have, I don't know, we got a couple of columns turned in. I'm going to see if we can figure out when to post those. One of them, Gracie, one of our writers, wrote a little bit about something that Giannis Antetokounmpo did over the summer, or rather recently. She kind of wanted to expound on that within the context of Luka Doncic, and I think that's a pretty interesting post. Got a couple more things coming as the week goes along. Kind of getting rev back up. The Bulls win would be really outstanding, just because for any schedule watchers out there, things get significantly more difficult after that Bulls game, because you go Denver, you go Charlotte, who is playing pretty well. You go Orlando, which is currently 3-0. They're trailing the Lakers right now. Then there's Toronto, which might be one of the worst offensive teams in the league. But then you go Clippers, New Orleans, Washington, who's but Milwaukee, Sacramento, like, things right up through the rest of November are pretty brutal. And so if the Mavericks were to get to December 1st with a 500-ish record, 1 to 3 games over it, I think I'd be pretty excited with how they've started. What do you think, man?
Oh yeah, for sure. And not to, I'm not trying to be, belittle the Mavericks here or anything like that, but the combined record of their 3 opponents is 2. What is it? They only have 2 wins.
Wemby hit threes against us. It's like the most, of course.
Yeah, the Nets are 1-2. The Spurs are 1-2. The Spurs are 1-2, and the Grizzlies are 0-4. So they haven't necessarily been tested, and really none of those 3 teams, I think, were predicted. Memphis predicted to be good, but I think everyone knew until Ja came back they were going to struggle. But Brooklyn and San Antonio were not predicted to be playoff teams. So they haven't really faced one of their contemporaries in the West or an Eastern Conference contender. So we're going to see that soon. So it'll be fun to see, because there's only so much you can take away when you kind of beat up on a team that's struggling.
Yep.
So we'll get some fun benchmarks.
On the flip side, the Mavericks didn't play down to their opponent.
Yeah, that's nice.
We've always seen.
I mean, it's wins. I think I saw Mavs PR said this is their first 3-0 start since 2004, 2005. So
that was a long time ago.
That was a long time ago.
I was a junior in college. Yeesh. I wasn't able to legally drink yet.
I wasn't either.
Man. All right. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. We will be back on Wednesday night, 7:30 start time against the Chicago Bulls. I'll get better about scheduling the start times at these. The Memphis game really ground to a halt at points, so that's why we were running a little late tonight. We'll be right back. I will be right back in less than 10 minutes with the live show, which I want you guys to come hang out and tell me your takes. And then we'll hang out for maybe half hour, 45 minutes, and go on and go to bed. Thanks so much for spending some time with us. Really appreciate there's a lot of people in here, particularly with the Rangers doing what they're doing. The Rangers won tonight. That's exciting. This has been Kirk Henderson and Josh Bowe of Pod Maverick and Mavs Moneyball. Everybody have a great Tuesday, and we will talk to you soon. Go Mavs.